Hey everyone, welcome back to In Her Wallet podcast, a weekly show helping women around the world take control of their finances for good and build better financial futures one episode at a time. My name is Sofiia. I am the host of In Her Wallet podcast, creator behind In Her Wallet, and an accredited investment representative here in Canada. It is fall now, which means that the workplace burnout is at an all-time high. And the reason for that is because we're feeling a lot of pressure associated with year-end deliverables. Of 10,200 full time desk based workers polled in 6 countries, including Canada and the US, over 40% said that they are burnt out, which is associated with feelings of energy depletion and negativism. There is one type of person, though, that is at greater risk of burning out in the workplace, and that is women professionals under the age of 30. And that is one of the main reasons why I thought In Her Wallet podcast should definitely have an episode around early signs of burnout in the workplace. And also, if you are already feeling burnout, how can we recover from it? Joining me to have this conversation is an amazing guest, Arunie Saldhi, who is a mental health and wellness expert. Arunie works with companies like KPMG, Wealthsimple, Narcity, TD, and Coast Capital to help them create strategies in the workplace to prevent burnout at work, fight imposter syndrome, and increase their mental fitness practices. If you like this episode, make sure to check out the links in the episode description and share it on your social media, which helps us grow and reach new audiences. There are several ways to support In Her Wallet podcast, which is either by leaving us a star rating, always goes a long way and helps us grow, or through Buy Me a Coffee link in the episode description. Well, with that out of the way, Arunie, welcome to In Her Wallet podcast. I'm so excited to have you on and have this conversation.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
And it's a wonderful conversation that we'll have right in time for fall. But before we dive into talking about burnout for women in the workplace, I want to help our community get to know you. So tell me, what's your go-to coffee order?
So it's gotten better. Like if you ask any of my friends, they would tell you the most embarrassing thing. Because when I was growing up, I used to get, what was it? I think a medium 3 milk, 4 sugar or something really bad. Just like it's just sugar milk is what I used to drink. So much so that when I used to order at like Tim Hortons, the person working there was like, "Are you sure? Like this is bad for you." It's
Incredible. I've never heard that.
it's gotten better though. I drink like a double double. I have an espresso now. It's very strong. I've like matured, but it used to be that.
I think we're all guilty of this kind of teas and coffees back in teenage years. I used to do a similar thing. So, yeah,
Okay, good.
that's
I don't
funny.
feel bad.
Rooney, what's the movie you can rewatch again and again if you have one?
It's definitely the Harry Potter series. It's any of
Yes.
them. It's like my comfort movie when I'm sick, when I'm happy, around the holidays. It's just any of them or like marathon.
Yeah. And if you could go anywhere in the world right now, where would that be?
Right now, just because I think I'm just being influenced by social media, like everyone's in Italy. So I'm like, I also want to be in Italy because just every single person is there right now. So I feel
I
left out.
know. I know. And I know it's going to shift. And I'll be very curious to see how our podcast guests will respond to this question going into Christmas and holiday season. But I feel like then we switch to New York because New York is like the Christmas
Yeah.
destination. Yeah. But I share with you, I'd love to go to Italy as well.
Yeah.
Aruni, for those folks who have not heard of you, can you tell us who you are, what your career path has been, and what do you do right now?
For sure. So I'm a registered provisional psychologist. I'm in Calgary, Alberta now, but I'm from Toronto. And I used to work in finance and then fintech. So I kind of took a very convoluted path to get here. I always knew I was going to be a therapist. Like deep down, I always knew I was going to end up here. But once I graduated, I didn't really want to do my master's right away. So I started working at the bank and then started learning about investments and then just kind of climbed that ladder and pursued that career for a little bit and then did my master's while I was doing all that. It was just like My early 20s were confusing. It was a lot going on. But now I work with a couple nonprofits in Calgary. I provide free counseling to um, people of color who are going through mental health disorders, addiction, and family violence. And then I have my private practice on the side where I work with mostly like high performers and founders. So it's very different. And also always trying to find the balance between like my passion. Which is helping the community, but also like working with really high achievers.
And I think it's helpful to highlight that your practice focuses specifically on corporate practices around mental health and burnout.
Yeah, exactly. So I also work with organizations. I go in and we kind of do like lunch and learns or workshops or manager trainings, specifically to target these almost like epidemics that are happening in the workplace. And burnout is obviously a very big one.
Yes, I agree with you. Well, I'm very excited to have you on. We haven't had a professional from your field on the In Her Wallet podcast before. And I think, especially during full time, it's timely to talk about burnout in the workplace. So, why don't we start our conversation with really laying the ground and identifying what a burnout is and how it can show up for people in their everyday lives?
For sure. So, burnout is extreme emotional exhaustion, cynicism. It's being ineffective in the workplace. So, I know it's common vernacular for us to be like, oh, I'm so burnt out. But burnout is that extreme state of like feeling negative. It's not a mental illness, it's not something that can be diagnosed yet, but it is a very major mental health disorder. And it does stem from the workplace. So that's the key difference between burnout and maybe some other mental health problems is that when we talk about burnout so far, it's only coming talking about from the workplace.
If today I'm feeling a little bit less creative or less effective, does that mean that that's an early sign of me having a burnout? Or how can we kind of start noticing that I'm having this repetitive patterns that maybe mean that I'm reaching a burnout stage?
Yeah, so that's a really good question because I think we're all allowed to feel that way at the end of the day. When you have a rough day, you're like, I'm so burnt out, like I'm tapped out today, no one talked to me. And that's okay. That's not the same as burnout. But if it's multiple bad days and multiple bad weeks and things are not changing, that's kind of your sign that, okay, I'm approaching that period that I have to worry about because it's not just one bad day or one bad week. We all have those. It's the same feeling of exhaustion, cynicism, like you're apathetic, you don't have energy. Like I can go through the symptoms in a sec, but it's just this it's not just depression or laziness or having a bad day, right? It's a lot more extreme than that, or it can be for a lot of people.
Got it. I recently was, as I told you before we started recording, I was listening to Jay Shetty's podcast on burnout, and the stat he shared was that on average, every professional will experience burnout at work by the age they are 32.
Wow.
So, for those listening, if they are under 32 or maybe reaching that age, chances are you have experienced it maybe without noticing or are going through that right now. So, I think this is why this conversation is so powerful because it will help us recognize these patterns.
Mhm.
Aruni, have you had a burnout yourself?
Oh yeah, big time. Mine was a couple years back. I was working at a fintech organization, and this was 2020. So it was tax season. It was really busy, and it was right when the pandemic was hitting. So the market was crashing. So everyone in this industry was working overtime. We were tired, trying to figure out like pandemics happening, what's going on, but also like every day there was multiple fires at work because of the market. And I was a manager, I was leading a team, and I was not a nice person. I was very burnt out. And it's when you're burnt out, you don't take care of yourself, right? I wasn't eating healthy. I wasn't going to the gym. I wasn't doing any of the things that I liked. I was working long hours. I was getting drinks with coworkers after so we could vent about work again. So you're never escaping that negative mindset. And adding alcohol doesn't help just because it's not going to make you feel good. But that's kind of the coping mechanisms we gravitate to, right? When you're feeling negative, you don't want to go and take care of yourself. You're like, I want to go drink and talk shit with my friends and rub
Yes.
their thoughts. Like that's what you want to do, and that's what I did. And I was not empathetic, not compassionate, very, very unlike myself.
It's very interesting that you share your experience and thanks for doing that because for me, I feel like I've gone through a burnout in a workplace before as well, but it showed up differently for me.
Mhm.
It was just, and the reason why I want to release this episode in the fall is because I went through that period when the fall hit and in Vancouver the rains started. So it's that
Yep.
gray weather all the time and you're going into the office and it's this artificial light that you're working with all the time. And it was just like, it's this daily routine and you wake up and you don't really want to go to the office and you get there like drag yourself to get there but you also feel like not super motivated and you have to put extra effort to get the deliverables done and at the end of
Mhm.
the day you when you reach that point of unhappiness, you're like, shit, but I'm stuck here because this is what pays my bills and stuff. So you
Yeah.
have to almost make decision like, what am I going to do with this? So it's interesting that we highlight these two experiences with you that are kind of different
Mhm.
with the symptoms. So my next question for you was going to be, I understand that burnout probably has different stages. How can we identify these early signs of a burnout?
So I'll go through kind of the four areas that I ask my clients and I ask everyone to kind of focus on is the first one is socially. So notice yourself socially, even within your coworkers and your workspace. Are you saying no to work activities more? Are you emotionally distancing yourself? Are your coworkers upsetting you and, are you feeling irritable by them all the time? um, Socially, like you might start saying no to plans with your partner and your friends. You want to isolate and you feel like you want to drop out of society. So this is different than, if you're an introverted person. If you're not very social to begin with, that's not what this means. It's more so, even if you're introverted, there are people or places that you go to that energize you. And if you're avoiding those habits and those patterns, like that's your warning sign. Physically, you will get gut health issues, chronic migraines, headaches, lack of energy is the main one. You're kind of dragging your feet. You might be increasing your substance or alcohol use. That's also another, again, unhealthy, sadly, coping skill, but we are guilty of it. Uh,
Yes.
and trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. So if you normally never had any issues with your sleep or appetite, and now you're seeing a change, that's a warning sign for mental health as well. Couple more for your emotions, emotionally cynical, apathetic, resentful, like all these negative, deep emotions, right? Like you don't know why, but everything's upsetting you. Kind of this is what happened to me. Like I was just like cynical and I was apathetic and I was, if someone was telling me something, I only wanted to talk about work. I was like, don't talk to me about anything else, which is not the type of manager I was. So for me, that was such a stark difference with the way that I was acting.
I
Um,
see. Yeah.
yeah. And lastly, your personality will change. So if you are avoiding your hobbies, if you're not enjoying the food you used to like, you don't want to go to your favorite restaurant, you don't want to go to the gym, like all those kind of things, that's a major sign that you're approaching that mental health zone where you need to be mindful of what's going on.
Aruni, is it fair to say that these signs start to show up daily, or is it kind of like, you notice that you start feeling that way once or twice a week, and then it becomes more of a regular pattern? Is there any stat around that, or like normally how would that start showing up for us to recognize? Because I think one of the main reasons why we reach extreme stages of burnout is because we just fail to recognize that we're starting to feel that way, and that perhaps is the first and right step towards recovering from that condition.
Totally. I Self awareness is really important. I would say it's different for each disorder, honestly, but for burnout, I would say if it's, 4 to 6 weeks, truthfully. because it builds up. And for some people, it's a lot less. Like 2 weeks in, they are having very severe symptoms of burnout. But normally, burnout creeps in because it's like, maybe there's some workplace problems, or, it's starting to rain and your mood is starting to go down. And it's very gradual at times. That's why we also aren't aware of it. It's like, oh, I don't know why. I'm just like really tired this week. And then you say that for 4 weeks, and you're like, okay, it's been a month and I've been feeling low.
Yes. And obviously, that starts impacting your performance at work as well. Do you have any stats or any information you can share with us on how burnout can impact our performance at work?
Oh my gosh. It impacts our performance in so many ways. Like, you don't want to speak up in meetings, you don't want to take on extra tasks, you don't even want to do your tasks. Like, all these things that we know happen when we're having a bad day. Um, the good news is, since the pandemic, Microsoft Teams released a study, I think in 2021 or 2022, actually. 53% of employees are now more likely to prioritize health and well being over work. So we are seeing the pendulums kind of swing the other way, whereas young professionals, especially, are like really prioritizing their work. Sorry, they're really prioritizing their mental health over their work. We see people going on vacations more and doing their hobbies more, and quitting more and like starting their businesses because that shift has happened.
Yeah, so that's something positive. I think definitely the generation of women who are probably under 30 and are starting to build their careers, they are more self aware in that regard.
Hmm.
Aruni, how can women professionals who might be experiencing with, a loss of creativity, this fatigue that we mentioned, how can they deal with that when, they might recognize that, oh my God, okay, this is actually me, this is how I'm feeling, but also I have this huge deadline in a month. I cannot really allow myself to feel this way. How
Hmm.
can, because my performance depends on that, my bonus, my year end, whatever, salary raise, promotion. How can people that are in situations like that really deal with it without compromising their mental well-being?
That's a tough question because it truthfully depends on each individual. If you are that type of person who needs the deadlines kind of showing up and that pressure is being added on for you to really perform, that's okay. Like, don't change that. And even in burnout, sometimes we see people get that little spark right at the end to be like, okay, I just need to push through and then I'll go back to feeling this way. And that's not a bad thing. I think people often think that's bad, that they should be more organized and well prepared. It's like, sure, in an ideal world, but if this is something that has worked for you, stay true to it. Don't change it now. Um, the other things, if you're trying to, again, if you have a little bit of a runway to get what you need to get done, is go back to self care. And I think a lot of people hate that word now because we've been saying it so much, but it just means like taking care of yourself. It could mean like having a longer shower in the morning, or going for a run every day, or taking your dog for a walk, like just something to kind of break up your day and just make it about you. Like, just a little bit of time that's just for you. It's not, no one's depending on you. No one wants to get this done. It's just for you. And that's a really great way of taking care of yourself. So, add more work if it means that it's just for you. Like, finish a project, read a book, go finish that painting. It feels counterintuitive when you're burnt out, but again, you're just doing it for yourself. So it's a nice shift.
I remember, mentioned when we started that one of the early signs is that socially you might not want to spend as much time with your family and friends. You just want to be by yourself.
Mhm.
Should you try to still push yourself to see the people who normally bring you joy and happiness, or should you actually spend more time alone focusing on your mental health in a different way?
I would say push yourself and be social if those people have energized you. Don't do it if, like, you go and they always make you feel worse. Like, that's not the people you want to be around. But lean on your circle, right? If you have a partner or best friends or family, just be like, I'm going to say no, but can we go somewhere? Like you might go kicking and screaming, but we've all had that where we go and we're like, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought. Like that was actually fun. Or that person was like really funny. So we are social beings. Whenever we think of any treatment plan for any individual, there needs to be a social aspect because we inherently crave that. Like we need it in order to feel better. So do push yourself and go out.
I also, again, speaking from my personal experience, I just changed the way at that time when I was feeling these symptoms of burnout to the way I spend time with my friends and family. So instead of potentially, going to a restaurant and really making myself do makeup and dress up, I opted out for inviting someone to my home and cooking a dinner because that
Mm.
also is what brings me joy and watching a movie. So you can really just take a different look at how you can spend time together. And that might doing something new, maybe doing a paint night. I know those activities are very popular right now. And I've been looking actually at ordering a few like paint by the numbers kits
Oh
from
my God.
Amazon.
I'm doing that right now.
You are?
Yeah. It's like my daily self-care because I don't want to think anymore. I want to turn my brain off and paint. And that's
Yeah.
what I can do with it. So that's it works really well.
Exactly. And like again, being social, just doing that in the company of your girlfriends at home with some nice music and if you
Mhm.
want some wine and some nice heartwarming food, I feel like that is you're still being social, but you're still like focusing on doing something by yourself in the company of people you love. So that could be a great alternative.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Like, you know, don't just do the things that you used to when you were approaching burnout, right? Switch up those activities and it does make such a difference. But yeah.
Same. And I think physically, you mentioned physically, we start feeling different way as well. So if you really don't feel like going to the gym and like working out, being on a treadmill, switch it up and go for a small hike or
Mhm.
go for a walk around the park. Just taking, I think, a little bit of a different look at how you can alternate these activities can also be a healthy way to deal with it and recover from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just you have to just move your body. Doesn't matter how intensely or not. You just need to kind of get those muscles moving a little bit.
Aruni, are there any gender differences in the burnout, and maybe are women more likely to experience it or not?
Absolutely. So there is research that shows that women are more likely to experience burnout in the workplace. And I think there's multiple reasons for that. One of them is that while burnout it stems from stressors in the workplace, it's still about work life balance, right? So if you are a woman who has child caretaking responsibilities, you're managing the house, you're the one who grocery shops, and you're trying to like have a social life and go to the gym and eat healthy and all these things, you're more likely to get burnt out because you're exhausted all the time. Now, some of those activities do energize us, but women, again, are more likely to not be in senior roles. So the type of work that they're doing might be a little bit different, maybe a little bit more administrative, less creative, you know. So if you're not feeling fulfilled in the workplace and you have so many responsibilities outside of it, it's very hard to kind of find that balance. And women are also not as likely to feel appreciated by their work and not get support. So, this is all research based that women in the workplace, while there are lots of great trends that have happened the past couple of decades, and women, of course, are leaders and are amazing, there's still that imbalance, I guess, especially in some industries. And there is still an imbalance between the responsibilities of managing home that automatically kind of falls on a woman.
Yes, I mean, you kind of if you feel demotivated at work and then you come home when you have to do your laundry and dishes and cook dinner and like take care of all other things. We recently talked on a different episode about the mental load that women
Yeah.
have, not only work related but also home related and like household management related, especially if you have a family and children. That can really take a toll on your mental well-being.
Hmm. And, you know, burnout is more likely to happen in the workplace when you expect too much of yourself and you feel like your work is not good enough. So you maybe have imposter syndrome or complex. You're feeling inadequate, you're feeling unappreciated, um, and you're maybe in a job that's not a good fit for you. And if you listen to some of those traits that I mentioned, minus the last one, a lot of them do lean more towards the feelings that women have in the workplace, right? They are feeling that they're overworked and underappreciated. They are feeling that they're not doing enough. They want to do more. So we know imposter syndrome happens more for women and women of color. Again, we go back and forth on this because sometimes it's it's not them, it's the workplace that's making them feel this way. So it's a very complex, layered case, but women need to be more mindful that they are more susceptible to burnout.
We started the episode saying that burnout more traditionally stems from the workplace. That is the main reason for burnout more often than not. And just now you mentioned that sometimes you might be feeling that way because you don't love the job that you're doing or your workplace. So
Mhm.
if you are someone who is in a position like that, you might feel dependent on the workplace and on the salary because that's what pays your rent and bills. How can women exit these situations in order to prioritize their well-being?
Yeah, I focused a lot about control and empowerment with my clients because that's what it kind of comes down to. There's another area though, right? If we think about even Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the bottom of the pyramid is the physiological sense. So that's your food, your water, your rest, your warmth, and the second one is safety and security. So if you're in that situation and maybe you're not at a financial place where you can move up and focus on other areas, you have to kind of just stay in that situation because you need to pay your bills and you can't switch right now. That's the case for a lot of people. So, what I would say is if that's happening, that's the part of you that accepts that, okay, this is my job for now. I hate it. That's okay, but I get a paycheck. But there's power in saying, like, I hate this job and I'm going to work my 9 to 5. And at 5 o'clock, I'm clocking out and focusing my energy on other things. So, don't feel like you're stuck. Set those boundaries. If your workplace is taking advantage of you and you're working overtime without getting paid, that's something that you need to set a boundary on and focus that energy on making your resume better or, going to the gym or whatever else you want. Like take control back in your day where you can. Because it's true, not all of us can just quit our jobs and start making $1 million the next day, right? I wish we could all do that. But if you can't, then you have to find control where you have to take the control where you can find it in your life.
I like that saying. And I think also, again, what comes from that workplace is the money that you earn. You can take some control back by paying yourself first if you don't have an emergency fund or savings account yet. Before
Hmm.
you start spending on things that you think are making you feel better, such as going for a happy hour with your girlfriends or
Absolutely.
ordering takeout, just be a little bit more conscious of how you're spending your money because instead of just paying someone else a restaurant for the drinks you're getting, put that money aside into a savings account and
Mhm.
start building that emergency fund slowly but surely. That will make you feel in control of your financial situation.
Yeah.
Fast forward to 2 months, you will see 2, 3, 4 months, you will see that you can now afford maybe to start looking for a different workplace where you don't have to necessarily settle for the first thing that comes your way. You can choose, and
Yeah.
that might make you feel again more in control. So making these small steps, I think one day at a time, is going to make you feel better. At least it did make me feel that way. Again,
Oh, me
just
too.
talking from my personal experience.
No, absolutely. I think one of the best things I did for my mental health was really tracking my money, really feeling empowered by being like, okay, I know exactly, even right now, I know exactly how much money is in all my accounts, but you don't have to be that intense.
Love it.
I know exactly how much money I'm going to get, where it's going. Like I can, and it makes me feel so good because then you feel like, okay, I put in all this extra work and I can see the money coming in. So, yes, I'm like approaching burnout or I'm feeling really bad or I hate my job, but okay, I'm getting paid and that's what I need from them is I need to I need to go have happy hour. Now I can afford it. So, that's kind of the perspective you want to take is like make that job work for you. You're working there so you can afford your lifestyle, right? So, that's
Exactly.
the perspective.
Are there any final tips you want to share with us on how to deal with burnout in the workplace, especially for women, as you mentioned, who are disproportionately affected by it?
Because burnout can be chronic in nature, affecting both your health and your performance, prevention strategies are considered to be the most effective. So focus on prevention. Don't get to a stage of burnout. It's really hard to climb out of it. And the longer, those that burnout lasts, the longer your bad habits are building, the longer your recovery is. So focus now on that prevention, focus on taking care of yourself, do the things that make you happy, do the things that are good for you, even though they're hard, like going to the gym and eating healthy and, journaling every night, like all those kind of things that are good for you. And we know they're good for you. You just have to make time for them.
Is there any book you can share with us, or a movie, or something that really puts you in the good mindset? Maybe something you've read in the past that you really enjoyed and thought, as a professional in this field, should every person should read this?
I do have a book. I don't know if I should recommend it because it's very trauma based, but it's my favorite book. It's The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. It's such a good book. If you're going to read it to understand about trauma in your body and your brain, just know that some of the examples can be triggering. So don't read it if you know your triggers, but it's such a good book in terms of understanding mental health in general. Like it's so good.
Thank you. Aruni, what's financial freedom to you? And what do you think every woman should do to achieve financial freedom? These are the two questions I ask every guest, so I'm very curious to hear your take on it.
I love these questions. Every woman should have their own definition of financial freedom. Every woman should feel confident in their financial decisions and not rely on anyone else to make those decisions for them. For me personally, financial freedom to me means retiring out my parents. It means not having to worry about mortgage payments every month and, being able to do the work in the community that I really value without worrying about a paycheck. I want to just be able to do the things I'm passionate about and not worry about, okay, well, does this mean I'm not going to make that much money? Like, I just don't want to have to worry about that. So that's what it means to me.
I love it. Thank you for sharing your take on financial freedom with us. Aruni, how can In Her Wallet community get in touch with you?
So lots of different ways. You can find me at aruniesaldi.com and learn all about the work that I'm doing in organizations. We have our own podcast, me and my co-host, called Brown Girl Problems. We have an episode on actually money coming up soon, but it's focusing more on South Asians and collectivist cultures and the struggles and challenges we go through.
Aruni, thank you so much for being with us. I absolutely enjoyed our conversation, and I'm sure it'll be an impactful one for our audience.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you all for being with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with your family and friends and whoever you think might find it useful. There are several ways to support In Her Wallet podcast and help us grow and reach new audiences. You can either leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, share this episode on your social media and make sure to tag our pages, or support us through a Buy Me a Coffee link in the episode description. As always, I want you to give yourself credit for showing up for yourself and your future, because every time you do that, you increase what's financially possible for you. Thank you all for being with us today, and I'll see you next week.